So today we are going to do the same thing we have been doing. We still have videos covering only the days since you last saw me, and we're going to start in the south with Rafa. We've got a couple maps here that we'll throw up to show, just so people can understand what we're going to do. Rafa there in the bottom of the map on the border with Egypt along the Mediterranean Sea. You see up where it says Gaza, that's actually the middle camps area that's now under attack. A little further north, you see Netzarim corridor. We will report a little bit more on that today, just because we've been following that story. And then the map of Rafa, if we could throw that one up, Tamara. Did we lose Tamara? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this is the focused map of Rafa, and you can see the purple is Israeli operations. I had never put these maps up because these are just lies. It makes it look like Israel controls all of that territory, but they don't. That's the area that they're destroying, but they're not in control of that territory in the way the map suggests. If you look at the bottom of that map, that's Kerem Shalom. That's the main Israeli crossing where the food supplies and aid has been coming into the south when it was a safe zone. In order to make it not a safe zone that could be attacked, the Israelis have essentially closed that crossing. They've also closed the crossing that's just up a bit from there. That's the Gazans crossing with Egypt for supplies. And then where you see the two arrows there, that's the Rafah crossing, Al-Auda crossing. That's the pedestrian, the passenger crossing that has been closed to people desperately needing medical attention, that has been dismantled in Gaza purposefully by Israel. And now they're blocking the exit for the people that need to leave. But the main thing to point out about this is the purple line going right up to the Mediterranean Sea there from the border with Israel. That's the Philadelphia corridor. I told you a little bit about that last week, or the last couple weeks. Israel took the complete corridor since we last reported for you guys. So that's what that looks like. And at the top, you can see there is the Mediterranean coast, and the dot that's just above the purple line, that's Tel Sultan. That's where the tent massacres were. And you can see why it created mass panic in the camps, in the safe zones, which are up along the coast. They're up a little higher towards Khan Yunis, Mawasi, where people are taking shelter, because the Israelis were moving in from the east side, pushing westward. And it looked like they were going to go neighborhood by neighborhood. But what they actually did was just focused on the Philadelphia corridor, and they raced up that corridor last week and carried out, I think Nora reported on really great in her introduction, at least 3 tent massacres, one in particularly brutal one, that created a mass flight of people from the Mawasi area, from the Tel Sultan area, where people believed that they would be safe for at least a number of weeks, because there's population centers on the western edge of Rafah, which is not true in the other areas that Israel has fought. And so the amount people were expecting it to take time for the Israelis to move through the Rafah camp, Yibna camp, all the way up to Tel Sultan. But because where you can see that they've run that corridor, they created mass panic in the camps. They massacred people in their tents. And now those people have fled from Rafah. More than 1 million people have fled Rafah and moved up to the middle camps, as Nora reported. And now the middle camps are under attack by the Israelis. So just a brutal situation. We'll start with Rafah and move to the north. I just wanted to give people a real sense of what we're talking about. And moving up the Philadelphia corridor isn't some kind of military accomplishment. It's a demilitarized zone that the Israelis negotiated with the Egyptians to be a demilitarized zone. Also in the Second Intifada, Israel destroyed all the houses that would be along the Philadelphia corridor. That's where Rachel Corrie was killed, trying to defend homes of families in the Rafah camp who had their homes demolished to create the Philadelphia corridor. So this is not a heroic military operation. It's racing up a demilitarized zone and attacking people living in tents. And as was pointed out, people who were born in tents in the late 1940s and 1950s are dying in tents today. And not just the elderly. We know that children that have been born since this war began are also being killed in tents that they were born in and are living in. So that's what the genocide looks like in the granular way. And Nora's been doing such a great job off the introduction of giving that news context for all of this reporting, which I always just want to bring in that humanitarian element in before we talk about the resistance, because the population is part of the resistance, and the courage with which they have carried out and the dignity with which they have carried out experiencing this genocide, the way they clean their houses, that it was a very moving part of Nora's presentation that I always appreciate. It was actually like the first thing that I noticed when I moved to Palestine. I moved to Jenin in the Intifada. And it wasn't just on a large scale, like after the end of the invasion. It would be as soon as the tanks left, because the tanks would drive down the street, knock the trees over, destroy the roundabouts, crush the curbs, smash people's doors of their shops in. And as soon as the tanks would leave, people would come out and immediately fix the curbs and sweep the streets. And that's something that has been going on in Palestinian society for a long time. And when you see it with your own eyes, like Nora showed that footage of the woman cleaning out her apartment and living in these apartments with no walls, I just think that the dignity and courage of that is resistance par excellence. And so I want to always keep that in focus when we're talking about the armed struggle, which we will do today, starting with number 1 tomorrow. And these are videos that I wish that these ones, they would give us 15 seconds before and after. This is a Yassin strike in Rafah. And you could see the destruction, the hellscape, landscape. But you can see the fighters using that. They're using the destruction to their advantage. If you look back there, we'll just let this run a couple times, because if you could just imagine what it looked 15 seconds before this and then 15 seconds after, as this fighter moves through those alleys in order to get into a position to strike within 50 meters, which is where the effective range of the Yassin RPG, and within the range that often doesn't allow the active protection system on these tanks. It's difficult to see if that's an interception by that tank. The fighter, again, in their infinite discipline, is already moving away to move back into those streets. But when you look just one more time, when he turns around, look at the streets. And this is the reason why the destruction is not beneficial to Israel either. Look at the street that when he looks down this alley, look at the rocks, the rubble, the rebar all over the street. You think tanks can run over that stuff, but they actually can't. It destroys their tracks. And so there's not even military purpose to this. This is military vandalism, and we're going to see it. It's going to be the theme of this entire segment of the program, because you'll just see it over and over again. So that's a Yassin strike versus a tank. We go to number 2. This is something we've seen before, fighters wiring a booby trap and then using this reverse camera from a car, repurposing the reverse camera. We've seen it going back to November, them using this ingenuity to target this foot force that is entering the house to sack the house. And that's why the houses all look like they've been robbed, because the soldiers literally sack the houses. And so these fighters here are, with their bare hands, wiring up these devices to be inside the homes, so that when the Israeli soldiers enter the homes, they're detonated. And that's what's happening here, detonated on the force, being monitored by a reverse camera from a car, using all the resources that they have. Those are Gaza-made weapons that we're seeing deployed here. That's a Radia, a unidirectional improvised explosive device. I mean, they call them IEDs, but we know that Qassam has a weapons manufacturing industry, so it's a bit of a misnomer. This is a weapon that they have developed, and they continue to make. They make many of them, so they're not improvised in the sense that most people think of the word improvised. Again, you can see this is a foot force. That's 𝐓𝐡𝐞 identifying that there's 4 soldiers in this foot force. And we look out this window here, we see 3 soldiers in a window. They can't help themselves, still doing that. And if we go to number 3, we got another 𝐓𝐴𝐽𝐿 sniper attack. We've seen a number of these. This is actually 3 attacks, and you're going to have to go to my Twitter feed, Jon Elmer, to check out the full videos because we have to edit these. Tomorrow did a great job of keeping as much as we could up here, but these are 3 separate sniper operations. All 3 of them drop the soldiers very clearly, as you'll see if you go to the full video. That's obviously a school, if people can't tell. So the IDF using a school, all their projections, it's always them using the schools. And that's a sniper hole that their soldiers have knocked out in a wall that makes it super easy for the Palestinian fighters to know where they are and hit them. All 3 of these sniper shots were hits, and they're hits with a 50 caliber weapon with bullets that will pass through body armor and come out the other side, and you can watch the bullets hit the walls from those. So we also saw thermal cameras in that, with something we've seen in this war. I think for the first time, the Israelis are talking a lot about how they use thermal cameras in this battle. And so it was interesting to see 𝐓𝐡𝐞 throw in here a thermal camera here. There you see it, to pick up the snipers, to pick up the Israeli snipers. So sniper on sniper. And we know, again, from Nora's report, what those snipers are doing. Those snipers are sniping kids and families in the street. They're not sniping Palestinian fighters that are running around in the streets. The fighters move through tunnels. They move in ways beyond these snipers. In fact, they snipe the snipers. So the only people the snipers are killing are civilians. And not to get ahead of myself, but that's what we found in Jabalia when the Israelis withdrew from Jabalia. Just people sniped all over the streets, just lying dead in the streets, in the middle of the road, middle-aged people that didn't have anything to do with anything, just being murdered. So that's the videos from Rafah were those were the only videos this week from Rafah, but the attacks carried on at roughly the same pace as they have for the last 3 weeks of the ground invasion. There was a big spike in operations in the beginning when the Israelis were moving in on the edge of Rafah. The Palestinians had defenses on the edge of Rafah that it took the Israelis 2 weeks to get through, and there was a lot of operations. Those are the ones that we showed, where the fighters were coming up in tunnels in the middle of army bases, army positions, and hand delivering weapons, coming out of tunnels and hand delivering Shawad explosive devices right to the back of the tanks. So those were all in Rafah as well, and we'll collect these. The battle in Rafah. The Americans are saying that this isn't the invasion of Rafah yet. They keep tripping over themselves to say that it's not the invasion of Rafah, but they carry out 50 plus airstrikes a day on Rafah, which is actually slightly lower than they have been. But you're talking about killing 100 people, 50 airstrikes a day, and then you're telling people with a straight face that that's not the invasion of Rafah, what it clearly is.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.